Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. Emilio Monroe adjusted his Brooks Brothers tie. At 52, he still projected the sharp, commanding presence that had helped him grow Meditech Solutions from the ground up into a billion-dollar powerhouse. His freshly trimmed salt and pepper hair, gleaming Italian shoes, and the Rolex on his wrist catching the skylight's rays completed the picture of a man in control. He had just wrapped up a lunch meeting at the upscale Riverside Bistro and was making his way toward the parking garage when he heard familiar voices that stopped him cold. "Did you see what Dad wore to the board meeting yesterday?" Zara's voice cut through the atrium, thick with disdain. "That tie was so last season. Mom says he has no sense of style." Emilio instinctively ducked behind a marble pillar, heart pounding. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but something about his daughter's tone made him freeze. Through the reflection of a nearby storefront window, he spotted his 17-year-old triplets gathered at a cafe table, luxury shopping bags scattered at their feet. Zara, always the ringleader, sat poised in her designer outfit, her long, dark hair styled in expensive layers. She resembled her mother, Shelley, so much it ached to look at her. Luke lounged in his seat, his private school blazer tossed aside, eyes glued to his phone with bored detachment. Sienna, the youngest by minutes, fidgeted with her coffee cup at the edge of the table. "At least he's good for the credit cards," Luke smirked, not glancing up. "Speaking of," he added, "I need him to sign off on the Porsche before the transfer." "As if that matters," Zara scoffed, idly stirring her iced latte. "Mom says once he signs over the company on our 18th birthday, we won't need his permission for anything." Emilio's grip on his briefcase tightened. He wanted to believe this was just typical teenage rebellion, self-absorbed and bratty. But Zara's next words shattered that illusion. "Uncle Ree says the adoption papers are ready," she said in a hushed but audible whisper. "Mom's boss is finally going to be our real dad legally and everything." The ground seemed to lurch beneath Emilio. Ray Alvarez, CEO of BioAdvance, Mediteca's largest rival. The man his children had called Uncle Ray for years. The man who always seemed to be around during Emilio's business trips, under the guise of being a close family friend. "Did you see his face when we asked for those new cars?" Luke looked up now, a cruel smile forming. "He really thinks we'll keep him around after the transfer. Like, what does he think this is? He'll probably end up in some Florida retirement home," he added with a mocking laugh, boring the nurses with stories about how he built a company from nothing. He mimicked Emilio's voice with savage precision. Emilio could barely breathe. The tightness in his chest grew heavier with every word. He had given them everything: private school tuition, luxury vacations, unlimited credit cards. He had skipped crucial business deals just to make it to their games and recitals. He hadn't built Meditech just for himself. It was supposed to be their legacy. Sienna shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes fixed on her untouched coffee. "Maybe we shouldn't," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, grow up, Sienna," Zara snapped, cutting her off with a dismissive wave. "Mom and Ryan already have everything lined up. The lawyers are just waiting for our birthday." She flipped her hair over her shoulder with practiced flair. "He's not even our real father, anyway. Mom told me Ray's been there since the beginning. Dad was just too stupid and obsessed with his precious company to see it." Luke chuckled. "Remember when he tried to ground me for taking his car? Mom and Ryan thought it was hilarious. They took me to that Lakers game right after, didn't even care what Dad said." Zara examined her manicured nails with detached satisfaction. "Ray says Dad's slipping at work too. The board's already concerned about some of his recent calls. Once the transfer's done, it'll be easy to push him out. Ryan says he's actually doing him a favor this way. Dad can pretend it was his decision to retire." The world had shrunk to this one moment. These voices that sounded like his children's, but didn't. Emilio's mind spiraled, rifling through years of memories, now painted with suspicion: every business trip when Ryan had just happened to be in town, every time Shelley insisted on managing the kids' paperwork herself, every boardroom leak he'd shrugged off as bad luck. "I heard Mom on the phone with Ryan last night," Zara went on, her voice lowering. "They're thinking of selling the house after everything's finalized. Ray's got this insane place in Beverly Hills, indoor pool, tennis court, the works. Mom says we shouldn't feel guilty. Dad'll have plenty of money to live on. Just not, our kind of money." Luke stretched and checked his watch. "We should go. Dinner with Ryan tonight. Mom wants us to practice calling him Dad when it's just us. Says we need to get used to it before everything goes official." Sienna stood abruptly, gathering her things without looking at her siblings. "I have to study," she muttered. But Zara caught her wrist. Her expression sharpened, all pretense stripped away. "Don't even think about warning him," she hissed. Mom says you've been acting strange. Just remember which side your bread is buttered on, little sister. Ray's going to be our father. He's taking over Meditech. That's just the way it is. Don't screw this up for us. The triplets grabbed their shopping bags and headed for the mall exit, their voices fading into the low hum of weekend shoppers. Emilio remained behind the pillar, frozen. His mind reeled, turning over years that now seemed like a carefully curated illusion. He had built an empire from the ground up. He had outmaneuvered hostile takeovers, weathered recessions, pioneered advancements in medical technology. And now he stood, motionless, as if struck down not by a competitor or crisis, but by his own blood. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Shelley, wondering why he wasn't home yet for their family dinner. Family. The word tasted like ashes in his mouth. Slowly, with deliberate precision, Emilio straightened his tie, adjusted his grip on the briefcase, and walked toward the parking garage. His expression betrayed nothing of the quake that had just ruptured his world. He had learned long ago, in business, the most dangerous moment was when you first uncovered betrayal. The key was not to react. Not yet. Not in anger. The key was to gather intel. To plan. To prepare. Sliding behind the wheel of his Mercedes, Emilio pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Kurt, it's Emilio Monroe. Remember that favor you owe me? I need access to some security footage, and Kurt, let's keep this between us. In the darkened security office, the steady hum of servers filled the silence. Screens cast a dim glow across the room as Kurt O'Brien, Meditech's head of security, cycled through file after file. It was 2:07 a.m., but neither man showed signs of slowing. They had been at it for hours, meticulously constructing a timeline of betrayal. Here's another one, Kurt muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. February 15th, last year. Ray's car in your driveway, at 2 p.m. You were in Singapore at that medical conference. He clicked to another timestamp. He didn't leave until 11:47 p.m. Emilio stood just behind Kurt's chair, his tie loosened, his expression calm, but his mind razor-focused. Show me the front door camera from around 6 p.m. The footage loaded. Ryan Alvarez, CEO of BioAdvance, carrying takeout containers and a bottle of wine. Shelley answered the door wearing the sapphire dress Emilio had given her for their anniversary. Their greeting was casual, familiar, intimate. You want to see more? Kurt asked, voice low, hand poised above the keyboard. No, Emilio replied evenly. Show me the parking garage footage from their office meetings. New windows filled the screen. Shelley's Mercedes pulling into the BioAdvance executive garage on dates she had claimed to be at charity events or donor luncheons. One timestamp made Emilio's jaw tighten. It was the day of Luke's championship soccer match, the game Shelley had missed, claiming a migraine. I've got something else, Kurt said, pulling up a new video file. Remember the leak about the new arterial stent design last year? The one that let BioAdvance file their patent 3 days before Meditech? The footage was damning. Shelley and Ray, in his office, reviewing a Meditech product development folder. The timestamp aligned perfectly with BioAdvance's surprise patent filing. She's been feeding him information for years, Emilio said, his voice cold and quiet. All those coincidences. All those times our competitors were one step ahead. There's more. Kurt hesitated, then opened a series of email exchanges he had recovered. They've been planning this for a while. The transfer of your shares to the triplets on their 18th birthday? That's just the first step. They've already drafted the board resolutions to force your retirement. Ray's team is set to move in within hours of the transfer. Emilio moved to the window, staring out at the city lights below. The triplets' medical records, he said. I want them. Kurt nodded and pulled up another series of files. Took some work, but I got full access. Blood types, genetic screenings, everything. He paused, glancing at his old friend. You want the DNA comparison? Do it. Moments later, the results filled the screen. The science was conclusive. The paternity probability was over 99.9%. The triplets were Emilio's biological children. They've been lying to them, Emilio said, his voice cracking for the first time. They made my own children hate me with a lie. Kurt stood and placed a hand on Emilio's shoulder. What do you want to do? We have enough here for criminal charges, corporate espionage, fraud. No, Emilio interrupted, turning back to the screens. His brief moment of vulnerability passed. Criminal charges would destroy the company. Hurt the triplets. They may hate me, but they're still my children. I need another way, something that exposes Ryan and Shelley without tearing down everything I've built. There might be a way, Kurt said cautiously. I've been tracking some irregularities in BioAdvance research data and financial reports. Something doesn't add up, but we'll need help, someone who knows how to follow the money. Emilio glanced at his phone and checked the time. It's time. I called in some favors. Remember Jody Park? The corporate attorney who tried to poach you for her firm last year? She owes me and she hates Ryan Alvarez. He attempted a hostile takeover of one of her favorite clients last year. Emilio straightened his tie, resolve settling in. Decision made. Give me everything you can on bio-advanced patents. Every filing since Ryan took over. I want to know which are legitimately theirs and which were stolen from us. And Shelley and the kids? Emilio's face hardened. Keep watching them. I want to know everywhere they go, everyone they meet. Especially Ray. I want to know every restaurant he takes them to, every promise he makes, every lie he tells. He paused, then added, and Kurt, pay special attention to Sienna. Something about her reaction today, she might not be as committed to their plan as they think. As Emilio left the security office, the first light of dawn was breaking over the city. His world lay in ruins. But from the shards he would build something new, something that would teach Ryan Alvarez, Shelley, and his misguided children the true meaning of strategy. The private conference room at Park & Associates offered a stunning view of the city, but no one present was distracted by the scenery. The mahogany table was covered with papers and laptops, while the whiteboard was filled with flowcharts and timelines. Jody Park, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s dressed in a perfectly tailored Armani suit, stood at the head of the table with a marker in hand. Let me make sure I understand, she said, circling a specific date on the timeline. Ray filed a patent on the bioresorbable stent technology 3 days before Meditech. But your team had been working on it for 18 months, Emilio interrupted. 22 months, he corrected, pushing a thick folder forward. Here is the complete development timeline, including lab tests and prototypes. Notice the dates on these electron microscopy images. Frankie Hampton, the forensic accountant they'd brought in, whistled softly as she studied the documents. Bio-advanced version is practically identical even down to the polymer coating formulation, she said. Identical enough that it couldn't be a coincidence, Kurt confirmed, pulling up side-by-side comparison images on his laptop. But that's just the start, Jody continued, moving to the whiteboard to draw new connections. Look at their last 3 major product launches. Each one corresponds to a significant Meditech project, and each time they filed patents just days before you were ready to go public. She turned to Emilio, her expression fierce. This is industrial espionage pure and simple. We could bury them in criminal charges. Emilio shook his head firmly. Criminal charges would tank both companies' stock. Thousands of innocent employees would suffer, and my children. He paused, steadying his voice. My children's trust funds are tied to Meditech's success. I won't punish them for their mother's crimes. Then what's our move? Frankie asked, spreading out bio-advanced financial statements. Because something else smells fishy here. Their R&D budgets don't align with their output and these shell companies. She pointed to several entries. They're funneling millions to consulting firms that seem to exist only on paper. Jody's eyes narrowed. Show me those shell companies. For the next hour, they traced the money. Ryan had been clever, but not clever enough. The shell companies led to offshore accounts. The offshore accounts led to luxury properties. And the properties? Son of a Kurt muttered, staring at the ownership documents. He's been setting up love nests. Multiple properties. Multiple women. 4 of them, Frankie confirmed, her fingers flying over the calculator. All arranged the same way: luxury condos, credit cards, monthly allowances, all paid with company money, funneled through the shell corporations. And Shelley doesn't know, Emilio said quietly. She thinks she's special, that he'll leave his wife for her just like he left me. This is it, Jody said, excitement creeping into her voice. This is how we bring him down, not through criminal charges, but through exposure. His wife sits on bio-advanced board. She controls 20% of the company's shares through her family trust. When she learns he's been using company funds to bankroll multiple affairs, she'll destroy him. And when the board sees the evidence of patent theft and fraud, Frankie finished. But timing is everything, Emilio interrupted. Ray and Shelley expect me to sign over my shares to the triplets on their 18th birthday. They think I'm unaware of their plan. We need to use that. Jody began scribbling furiously on the whiteboard. We have to make them believe they're winning, make them overconfident. If Ryan thinks he's about to get everything he wants, he'll slip up. People always make mistakes when they think they've already won. I think I know how, Frankie said, pulling up another spreadsheet. Look at these research budgets. BioAdvance has been running at a loss for the last 3 quarters, but they're hiding it with creative accounting. If we can force them into a major acquisition right before the truth comes out. An acquisition? Kurt raised an eyebrow. What do you have in mind? Emilio stood, gazing out over the city, a labyrinth of opportunity and betrayal below. They'll want Meditech's manufacturing division. Ray's ego won't let him pass up the chance to own the company he's been stealing from. But the manufacturing division is your strongest asset, Jody protested. The patents and research are valuable, but it's your production facilities that give you market dominance. A faint smile crossed Emilio's lips. Are they? Frankie, show them what you found in the quality control reports. The forensic accountant pulled up another file. There have been issues over the past 6 months, nothing catastrophic yet, but the trends are worrying if these aren't addressed. She let the implication hang in the air. So we split the company, Jody said slowly, understanding dawning. Sell the manufacturing arm to BioAdvance right when Ryan thinks he's about to take control. He'll believe he's stealing it from under you. And the patents and research division? Kurt asked. We take that to someone else, Emilio said firmly. Someone who knows how to protect intellectual property. Someone who hates Ryan Alvarez as much as we do. Jody's eyes lit up. Reed Church, he's been trying to break into the medical device market for years. And after what Ryan did to his semiconductor division, he'll be eager. Emilio turned back to the group. But none of this will work if they catch on. I have to seem vulnerable. Defeated. That's going to be tough, Kurt said, concern evident in his voice. You're not exactly known for showing weakness. Then I'll have to deliver the performance of my life. Emilio loosened his tie slightly. Starting tomorrow, I want rumors about my stability to start circulating, not blatant, just enough to make people uneasy. I can help with that, Jody offered. A few strategic conversations with board members, expressing doubts about recent decisions. I'll start appearing a little disheveled at meetings. Nothing dramatic, Emilio continued, just enough to keep the whispers alive. Let Ryan believe his plan is working better than he expected. What about Shelley and the kids? Kurt asked quietly. A flicker of pain crossed Emilio's face before he composed himself. Keep watching them every move, every meeting, every conversation. I need to know everything they do with Ray, especially Sienna. Something about her reactions doesn't fit the pattern. And the DNA results? Frankie asked gently. Should we prepare documentation about their true paternity? Emilio stared out at the city lights for a long moment. Yes, but keep it separate from everything else. That's not about revenge, it's about truth. My children deserve to know who they really are, even if it means they hate me for telling them. This will require perfect timing, Jody warned, studying the intricate web of relationships and transactions mapped out on the whiteboard. One wrong move, one leak, and it all falls apart. Then we don't leak, Emilio said firmly. Everyone in this room has a reason to hate Ryan Alvarez, but more importantly, everyone here knows how to keep a secret. We plan everything down to the smallest detail, prepare for every contingency, and when the time comes. He picked up a dry erase marker and drew a final line connecting all their plans. We show them what true corporate strategy looks like. The room fell silent as they absorbed the weight of what they were plotting. Finally, Frankie spoke. I'll need full access to BioAdvance financial records, the official ones and the hidden ones. You'll have it, Jody promised. I still have contacts in their accounting department, people who owe me favors. I'll begin compiling evidence of patent theft, Kurt added. Every stolen design, every leaked document, every suspicious coincidence in timing. By the time we're done, there will be no doubt about what they did. Emilio nodded, his face set in determined lines. Good. Remember, starting now, we trust no one outside this room. Ryan and Shelley think they've spent years plotting my downfall. We'll show them what a real long game looks like. As the meeting broke up, Jody held Emilio back. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Your relationship with your children. My relationship with my children is already gone, Emilio said quietly. They made sure of that. All I can do now is make sure they learn the truth about Ray, about their mother, and about themselves. What they do with that truth is up to them. Below, the city lights twinkled on, indifferent to the plans unfolding in the quiet conference room. Emilio Monroe, the man who had built an empire from nothing, was ready to risk everything, not for revenge, but for justice. And somewhere deep inside, he clung to a faint hope that at least one of his children might someday understand why he had to take this path. Early morning light filtered through the blinds of Frankie Hampton's office as she spread dozens of financial statements across her desk. Dark circles under her eyes revealed countless sleepless nights spent untangling BioAdvance's tangled web of financial deceit. A half-empty coffee cup teetered atop a stack of audit reports. Look at this, she said, highlighting a series of transactions on her monitor while Emilio leaned over her shoulder. They're routing R&D funds through at least 7 different shell companies before the money reaches the real accounts, a classic money laundering setup. But they've added extra layers to disguise it as legitimate R&D spending. Emilio studied the numbers, his expression carefully controlled. And you're certain you can trace every penny? Frankie pulled up another spreadsheet. Ray's been manipulating the books for years. BioAdvance looks profitable on paper, but they're bleeding money. Last quarter alone, they lost nearly $40 million hidden through clever accounting. The forensic accountant turned to Emilio, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal real concern. There's more. Those consulting fees paid to shell companies, they're not just covering up the affair with your wife. There are multiple properties, multiple accounts. Ray's running the same scheme with at least 3 other women. Emilio absorbed the news without showing any reaction, but his fingers tightened subtly on the back of Frankie's chair. Show me the pattern. For the next hour, they traced payment after payment. Luxury condos in 4 cities, credit cards issued by shell companies, wire transfers disguised as consulting fees, all paid with BioAdvance money and hidden from shareholders and the board. The question is, Frankie said finally, how do we use this? Before Emilio could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Kurt. Board meeting just ended. Rumors spreading. 3 members asked about your health today. A faint smile touched Emilio's lips. The act he had been perfecting was working. Over the past few weeks, he'd carefully crafted the image of a man under pressure, his once impeccable suits now slightly rumpled, his legendary punctuality replaced by arriving a few minutes late to meetings, and most tellingly, carrying a water bottle filled with apple juice, letting people speculate as they saw him sip from it throughout the day. Mr. Monroe, Jessica, his assistant, appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Monroe is on the line. She says it's about the triplets' birthday party plans. Emilio exchanged a knowing glance with Frankie before picking up the phone. Shelley. Yes, I was just reviewing some reports, he said, letting his voice slur just enough to be noticeable. On the other end, he could almost hear Shelley's predatory smile. Emilio, darling, are you feeling all right? You sound tired. Just focused on work, he replied, deliberately mixing up details about a major client meeting, the kind of slip the old Emilio would never make. Maybe you should take some time off, Shelley said, her tone thick with feigned concern. The children and I are worried about you. Even Ryan mentioned you seemed distracted at the last industry conference. Emilio's free hand curled into a fist, but his voice stayed deliberately unsteady. Ray, yes. Good old Ray, always looking out for the family. We just want what's best for you, darling. Why don't you let me handle the birthday preparations? You focus on getting better. After ending the call, Emilio turned to find Frankie watching him with a mix of admiration and concern. That was quite a performance, she said. They need to think they're winning, Emilio replied, his voice sharpening back to its usual clarity. The more vulnerable I seem, the bolder they'll become. And the bolder they get, the more mistakes they'll make. Frankie returned to her computer, pulling up a fresh set of documents. Speaking of mistakes, look what I uncovered buried in BioAdvance internal audit reports. Her screen displayed a series of quality control warnings that had been systematically ignored, failed safety tests swept under the rug, design flaws concealed with falsified data. BioAdvance's entire product line rested on a foundation of fraud. Their whole regulatory compliance program was nothing more than a house of cards. One good shove, and it all comes crashing down, Frankie explained. The question is, how do we make sure we're not caught in the blast zone? Emilio studied the reports, his mind racing through possibilities. We need someone else to throw the first stone. Someone with clean hands. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Jody Park entered, her expression triumphant. You're not going to believe who just called me, she announced. Reed Church's general counsel. Emilio raised his eyebrows. Reed Church, CEO of Church Industries and BioAdvance's biggest competitor, was notorious for aggressive expansion tactics and a personal grudge against Ryan Alvarez, who once tried to forcefully take over one of Church's subsidiaries. They've heard rumors about your troubles, Jody continued, eyes gleaming. They want to discuss potential acquisitions. Are they now? Emilio said thoughtfully. And what exactly are they interested in acquiring? That's the best part, Jody smiled. They want to know if you'd consider splitting up Meditech. Apparently, they've heard you might be open to selling the research division separately from manufacturing. Frankie looked between them, realization dawning. If we structure the deal right, we could give everyone exactly what they want, or at least what they think they want, Emilio finished. The morning sun climbed higher, casting light over Frankie's desk piled with damning financial documents. In that moment, all the pieces they'd been gathering began to fit together into a clear pattern of destruction. There's just one thing, Frankie said hesitantly. The triplets' trust funds are tied to Meditech stock. If we split the company, their interests will still be protected. Emilio's voice was steady and firm. Everything I've built and everything I'm about to tear down was always for them, even if they hate me for it. He walked to the window, watching the city awaken below. Somewhere out there, Ryan and Shelley were probably congratulating themselves on how well their plan was working. They had no idea they were walking right into a trap years in the making. Set up the meeting with Church's people, he told Jody, but through intermediaries. We can't let Ryan catch even a whisper of this until everything's ready. Frankie asked quietly, and your performance, how long can you keep it up? Emilio straightened his intentionally rumpled tie and let his shoulders slump just a little the perfect picture of a man struggling to maintain appearances. As long as it takes. After all, a faint trace of his old smile flickered across Emilio's face. The show must go on. The private dining room at the St. Regis Hotel hummed with quiet tension as Reed Church's attorneys examined the proposed deal structure. The elaborate lunch spread before them remained untouched. Let me make sure I understand, Elizabeth Chun, Church Industries lead counsel, said carefully. You're proposing to split Meditech into two separate entities. The Research and Development Division, including all current patents and pending applications, would go to Church Industries, while the manufacturing facilities would be spun off as a separate company. Correct? Jody Park confirmed, sliding another document across the polished mahogany table. We've already prepared preliminary valuation reports for both divisions. Elizabeth studied the numbers with practiced skepticism. These manufacturing facilities are among the most advanced in the industry. Why separate them from R&D? Emilio, seated at the head of the table, lifted his water bottle with a slightly trembling hand. Several lawyers exchanged knowing glances at the faint scent they assumed was vodka, but was actually apple juice. Sometimes, he said carefully, choosing his words to sound slightly ambiguous, you have to know when to let go. The manufacturing side, it's become too much. Too many details, too many moving parts. It's better to focus on what we do best: innovation, research, moving the industry forward. His performance was flawless, a once proud CEO struggling to maintain dignity as his world crumbled. Elizabeth's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Like everyone else in the industry, she'd heard the rumors about Emilio Monroe's faltering stability. And you're certain you want to structure it this way? She pressed. Once the split is announced, other buyers might emerge for the manufacturing division. Let them, Jody interrupted smoothly. In fact, we're counting on it. A bidding war would only increase shareholder value. The unspoken name lingered in the air: BioAdvance. Everyone knew Ryan Alvarez wouldn't resist the chance to acquire his rival's production facilities. The meeting stretched on for hours, delving deep into technical details and legal requirements. Throughout, Emilio maintained his carefully crafted facade of a man barely holding himself together, mixing up dates, forgetting key terms, needing basic concepts re-explained, all while dropping subtle hints about the manufacturing division's potential. As the lawyers packed up their briefcases, Elizabeth gently touched Emilio's arm. Mr. Monroe, are you sure about this? Once we announce the split, there's no turning back. Emilio's hand shook slightly as he reached for his water bottle. Sometimes, Miss Chun, the only way forward is to break everything apart and see what rises from the pieces. Later that evening, in Jody's office, the mask fell away. Emilio stood straight and alert, his mind sharp as ever as they reviewed the meeting's outcomes. Church's board will approve the deal, Jody confirmed, hanging up her phone. They're practically salivating over the research division. And our sources say Ray is already making noise about bidding for manufacturing. Of course he is, Emilio said with cold satisfaction. His ego won't let him pass up the chance to own the facilities that have been outproducing his for years, especially when he thinks I'm too broken to fight back. The timing will be crucial, Jody warned. We need the deals to close almost simultaneously. If Ray gets any hint of what's really in those manufacturing reports. He won't, Emilio assured her. He's too focused on the bigger prize. By the time he realizes what he's actually buying, it'll be too late. A knock at the door broke their conversation. Kurt entered, his face grave. You need to see this, he said, handing over his tablet. Security camera footage showed Ryan and Shelley at an intimate dinner, heads close together as they celebrated their apparent victory. But it was the third person at the table who made Emilio's breath catch. Luke, his son, listening intently as Ryan gestured expansively, clearly painting pictures of a golden future. They're moving faster than we expected, Kurt said quietly. Ray's already positioning himself as a mentor to Luke, talking about grooming him to take over the combined companies once the dust settles. Emilio watched his son's eager expression, seeing the same ambition that had driven his own rise in business. But Luke's ambition was twisted by lies and manipulation, pointed like a weapon at the very legacy Emilio had built for him. Speed up the timeline, he ordered, his voice tight with controlled emotion. I want both deals ready to close before the triplets' birthday. Let Ryan think he's forcing our hand. Are you sure? Jody asked. Moving too quickly increases the risk of mistakes. The biggest mistake, Emilio said, still watching his son laugh at something Ryan had said, would be letting them poison my children any further. Get it done. As his team dispersed to set the accelerated plan in motion, Emilio remained in Jody's office, staring out at the darkening sky. The city lights below reflected in the window, creating the illusion of stars falling soon. Very soon, Ray's entire empire would collapse just as spectacularly. The private office of Alma Crosby, college counselor at Westfield Academy, was designed to put students at ease. Warm lighting, comfortable chairs, and walls lined with college pennants created an atmosphere of possibility and trust. But on this particular afternoon, a week before the triplets' 18th birthday, the room crackled with tension. Sienna Monroe sat rigid in one of the plush armchairs, her designer uniform perfectly pressed, her hands twisted tightly in her lap. Tears streaked through her carefully applied makeup. "I can't do it anymore, Miss Crosby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Every time I see him at breakfast, trying so hard to connect with us, and Zara and Luke, they're just so cruel to him. And Mom just watches, smiling like it's all going according to plan." Alma leaned forward, concern etched across her kind face. "Your father, he's not." Sienna stopped her, swallowing hard before rushing on. "That's just it. He is my father. My real father. I found the DNA test results in Mom's home office last month. She must have stolen them from Dad's files. Ray's been lying to us our whole lives. They both have." Unbeknownst to either of them, Emilio stood frozen in the hallway outside, his hand raised to knock. He had come to discuss Sienna's college applications, maintaining his role as the involved parent even as his master plan neared its climax. Instead, he found himself holding his breath, listening to his youngest child finally speak her truth. "I don't know what to do," Sienna continued, her voice small. "Zara and Luke are so excited about Ray adopting us after the company transfer. They talk about it constantly, how we'll finally be a real family, how much better everything will be once Dad is out of the picture. But it's all built on lies. Have you thought about telling your siblings what you found?" Alma asked gently. Sienna's bitter laugh lacked its usual softness. "They wouldn't believe me. Mom and Ryan have them completely convinced. And even if they did believe me, Mom would know I was the one who found the tests. She'd tell Ray. And he can be scary sometimes when things don't go his way." Emilio's hand clenched into a fist at those words. He'd seen Ray's temper in business, but the thought of his daughter fearing that rage hit him hard. "Last week," Sienna continued, "I heard him on the phone after everyone else had gone to bed. He was so angry about something at work, screaming about how he'd destroy anyone who tried to stop him from getting what he deserved. It was like a mask slipped, and I saw who he really is." "Sienna," Alma's voice was gentle but firm, "if you're afraid." "I'm not afraid for myself," Sienna interrupted. "I'm afraid for Dad. You should see how Mom and Ryan look at him lately, like vultures circling something wounded. He seems so tired, so defeated sometimes. I want to tell him everything, warn him somehow, but what if I'm too late? What if telling him now would only make things worse? And Zara and Luke, they'd never forgive me. We're triplets. We're supposed to stick together. But everything feels wrong, like we're all playing parts in some horrible play, and I can't remember my lines anymore." Outside the door, Emilio closed his eyes, letting Sienna's words wash over him. His careful plan, his orchestrated downfall, it all took on a different meaning knowing at least one of his children had seen through the lies. "I did try to talk to Luke once," Sienna admitted, after he and Zara spent an entire dinner mocking Dad's drinking problem. "I told him maybe we should be concerned instead of cruel. But he just laughed and said Ryan had explained everything, how Dad's weakness was why the company needed new leadership, how we were better off without him. He actually seemed proud of helping push Dad out." The bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Sienna quickly wiped her eyes, pulling her mask of perfect private school student back into place. "Miss Crosby, please don't tell anyone about this. I don't know who to trust anymore." Alma reached across her desk to squeeze Sienna's hand. "Everything said in this office stays confidential, Sienna, but I want you to know you can always come talk to me. And if things ever feel unsafe." "They don't," Sienna assured her quickly. "Not physically, anyway." She struggled to find the words. "It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, knowing you could warn someone but being too afraid to speak up." After Sienna left, carefully composing her face into its usual mask of private school perfection, Emilio remained in the shadows of the hallway. His mind raced with new information, new variables to consider. The corporate chess game he'd been playing suddenly felt hollow compared to the pain in his daughter's voice. He made his way back to his car, nodding absently to students who greeted him. His phone buzzed relentlessly, Jody with updates about the deals, Frankie with more financial discoveries, Kurt with surveillance reports. But for the first time since it all began, Emilio hesitated. Safely behind tinted windows, he pulled out the latest reports on Bio Advance's manufacturing defects. The evidence was overwhelming: rushed quality controls, covered-up safety issues, and potential recalls looming like ticking time bombs. From a revenge standpoint, Emilio's plan to let Ryan take over this disaster was flawless. But then his phone rang. Kurt's number. The surveillance photos just came in. Kurt's head of security reported without any introduction. Ray's meetings with Luke weren't isolated incidents. They'd been holding regular mentoring sessions at the bioadvance office. Ryan was grooming him, Emilio's son, teaching him all the wrong lessons about business, about family, about everything. Emilio watched a group of students pass by his car, their lives untouched by corporate schemes and family betrayals. What about Zara? A similar story. Shelley had been taking her to charity galas, introducing her as Ray's future stepdaughter. The society pages were already spinning the narrative. The tragic tale of a businessman losing control while a more suitable father figure stepped in to save the family. The rage Emilio had so carefully kept in check threatened to erupt. It was one thing to steal his company and try to destroy his legacy, but to twist his children's minds, to poison them not only against him, but against the very values he'd tried to instill, that was unforgivable. Sir, Kurt's voice carried a note of concern. Should we adjust the plan? Emilio thought of Sienna's tears, Luke's eager descent into corruption, Zara's practiced cruelty. He thought of Ray's concealed rage that had terrified his daughter and Shelley's deliberate manipulation of their children's hearts. No, he said finally, his voice steely. But we had safeguards. Triple-check the trust fund structures. Make absolutely certain the children are protected financially, no matter what happens to bioadvance or Meditech. And Kurt, get me everything you have on Ray's temper, every business dispute that turned violent, every threat, every incident. If he ever comes near my children with that rage. I'm already compiling it, Kurt assured him. And Sienna, after what she overheard, we protect her, Emilio said firmly. But we don't reveal our hand yet. She's safer if Ryan and Shelley believe she's still under their control. He paused, then added quietly, make sure she knows she has allies. Have Alma reach out to her about that summer program at the Medical Research Institute, the one that could lead to early college admission. After ending the call, Emilio sat in his car for a long moment, watching the school gradually empty. His phone buzzed again, Jody, with news that Church Industries had accelerated their timeline. Everything was moving faster now, racing toward a conclusion that would shatter multiple lives. The perfect revenge was within reach. Ray's downfall was practically guaranteed. But knowing that at least one of his children saw through the lies, Emilio faced his toughest challenge yet. How to destroy the corrupt without crushing the innocent. How to expose the truth without breaking the very people he was trying to protect. As he finally started his car, Emilio's mind was already working on adjustments to his plan. The corporate endgame would proceed as planned. Ray and Shelley had earned every bit of destruction coming their way. But for his children, especially Sienna, he would need to build something else. An escape route, a way back, a chance at redemption. The setting sun painted the sky in deep reds as Emilio drove away from Westfield Academy. Behind him, his daughter Sienna watched from an upper window, her face troubled as she observed his obvious distraction. Neither father nor daughter realized it yet. But this moment, this quiet exchange of watching and being watched, concern flowing both ways, would become the pivotal turning point shaping everything that followed. At bioadvance headquarters, glass walls gleamed as Ryan Alvarez strode through the lobby, his trademark confident smile firmly in place. The security guards greeted him with a polite, "Good morning, Mr. Alvarez," which he barely acknowledged with a nod. Today was too important for pleasantries. In 3 days, the triplets would turn 18. In 3 days, everything he had worked for would finally come together. The manufacturing division of Meditech would be his. Emilio Monroe would be finished. And Ryan would have both the family and the empire he believed he deserved. His phone buzzed. Shelley's name lit up the screen. "Everything's ready," she purred without preamble. "The lawyers have the adoption papers prepared. The kids are thrilled, especially Luke. He can't stop talking about learning the business from you." Ray's smile widened as he stepped into his private elevator. Meanwhile, Emilio, barely functioning after stumbling through yesterday's board meeting, where he ramblingly referenced old projects and couldn't keep numbers straight, felt the weight of defeat. The board members had barely met his eyes. The elevator doors slid open directly into Ray's executive suite, where his assistant awaited with a stack of documents. "The MedTech manufacturing acquisition papers just arrived, sir. They need your signature." Ray grabbed the blank pen from his desk, its weight satisfying in his hand. These documents represented everything he'd schemed for the years of patient manipulation finally bearing fruit. With flourishing strokes, he began signing, each signature driving another nail into Emilio Monroe's coffin. Suddenly, his assistant's voice trembled. "Sir, there are some people here from the FDA." Ray's head snapped up. 3 stern-faced individuals in suits stood in the doorway, flanked by federal agents in tactical gear. The lead investigator held up a badge. "Mr. Alvarez, I'm Inspector Saraton from the FDA's Criminal Investigation Unit. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize all documents related to your product safety testing and research data." The pen slipped from Ray's fingers, leaving a jagged black slash across the acquisition papers. There must be some mistake, he began, but the words caught in his throat as more agents poured into the office. No mistake, sir, Inspector Seriton's voice was cold. We have received detailed evidence of systematic falsification of safety data, covered-up quality control failures, and fraudulent research submissions. I suggest you contact your attorney immediately. Ray's mind raced. How had they found out? Then his eyes landed on the acquisition papers for the manufacturing division, and sudden realization hit him like a physical blow. The timing was no coincidence. His phone buzzed again. Not Shelley this time, but his CFO. Ray, the SEC is here. They're asking about the shell corporations and hidden accounts. Someone sent them everything. Through the glass walls, Ryan could see chaos spreading across the office, agents at every workstation, employees being questioned, boxes of documents being hauled away. His carefully constructed world was unraveling, thread by thread. Mr. Alvarez, Inspector Seriton's voice cut through his panic. We will need access to your personal files as well, particularly anything related to the recent Meditech manufacturing division acquisition. Ray's hand moved toward his desk drawer, reaching for the USB drive containing the true numbers, the ones revealing how deeply BioAdvance was bleeding money. But before he could grasp it, two agents stepped forward, their message clear. Everything was now evidence. His phone would not stop buzzing messages from board members, shareholders, even his wife's lawyers. Everyone was demanding answers he couldn't provide. A commotion near the elevator caught his attention. News cameras. Somehow, the press had already caught wind of the raid. Through the glass, he watched his carefully constructed image crumble in real time as reporters filmed federal agents carrying boxes of evidence through the lobby. Sir, his assistant's voice rose with panic. Church Industries just announced their acquisition of Meditech's research division and patents. It's all over the financial news. The pieces finally fell into place in Ray's mind. The manufacturing division he'd been so eager to acquire. Emilio had known about the defects, the quality control failures. He had known everything all along. Ray, thinking he was setting a trap, had actually been walking right into one. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from an unknown number containing a short video clip. Security camera footage from years ago showing him accepting confidential Meditech documents from Shelley in a hotel lobby. The message below was simple: the FBI has the rest. As federal agents methodically dismantled his office, Ryan Alvarez, the man whose success was built on stolen innovations and fraudulent data, sank into his leather chair. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, his fragmented reflection caught in the morning sun, the perfect symbol of his empire's collapse. Meanwhile, Shelley Molina Monroe's Louis Vuitton heels clicked sharply against the marble floors of her bare mansion as she paced the foyer, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching her phone. 17 missed calls from Ray, all unanswered. The news was everywhere. BioAdvance raided, stock plummeting, federal investigations launched. This wasn't how today was supposed to unfold. Today was meant for final preparations for the triplets' birthday celebration, the smooth transfer of power, and her triumphant debut as soon-to-be Mrs. Ryan Alvarez. The front door opened, and her housekeeper entered, carrying a large manila envelope. This just arrived by courier, Mrs. Monroe. They said it was urgent. Shelley's hands trembled as she tore it open. Divorce papers spilled out, followed by something far worse: dozens of documents. Security camera stills of her meetings with Ray, printed emails outlining their conspiracy, bank statements from shell corporations. But it was the last set of papers that chilled her blood. Property deeds, credit card statements, and hotel receipts, not just hers, but for 3 other women, all arranged the same way, all paid from the same hidden accounts, all dating back years before she had ever met Ray. Her phone buzzed again, not Ray, but Zara. Mom, have you seen social media? They're saying Ray's being arrested. There are pictures of FBI agents at BioAdvance. Darling, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Shelley forced herself to sound steady. Everything will be fine. But Luke just texted me from Ray's office, Zara replied. He was there for his mentoring session when the FDA showed up. They're talking about fake research data and defective products. Mom, what's going on? The doorbell rang again. This time, when the housekeeper answered, a team of SEC agents stood on the doorstep, warrants in hand. Mrs. Monroe, the lead agent's voice was professionally neutral. We need to ask you some questions about your involvement in transferring confidential information from Meditech Solutions to BioAdvance Industries. Shelley's world spun. Through the open door, she could see news vans gathering at the gate. Somewhere in the house, her phone kept buzzing with messages. She was now too afraid to read. Hours later, after the agents had finished their initial questioning and seized her computers, Shelley sat alone in her immaculate living room, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully built life. The divorce papers still lay where she had dropped them, alongside the damning evidence of Ray's other affairs. Her phone had finally stopped buzzing, but now, the silence felt even worse. The last message she'd received was from Luke. Just saw the arrest footage. How long have you and Ryan been lying to us? The sun was setting when Sienna appeared in the doorway, her face pale but composed. I found the DNA test results from last month, she said softly. The ones that proved Dad, our real dad, was telling the truth all along. Shelley looked up at her youngest child and, for the first time, really saw how much Sienna resembled Emilio. In moments of clarity, Sienna, Shelley began, but the younger girl cut her off. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Sienna replied, her voice smooth but cutting. You and Ryan lied to us our entire lives. You made us hate our real father, so you could steal his company and his family. And now, she gestured at the scattered papers, the empty house, the news van still visible through the windows. Now everyone knows the truth. Where are your siblings? Shelley asked suddenly, noticing how quiet the house had grown. Zara is at her friend's house. She couldn't bear being here after seeing those pictures of Ryan with his other women. Sienna's emphasis on that last word made Shelley flinch. Luke is still trying to process that his mentor built his entire career on stolen ideas and fake research. A notification sounded, cutting through the tension. It was Sienna's phone this time. She glanced at it, her expression blank. They just released the video of Ryan being let out of BioAdvance in handcuffs. It's trending everywhere. The reality of the situation hit Shelley with full force. The perfect life she'd planned, the smooth transition of power, the fairy tale ending with her powerful new husband, all lies, built on lies. Now, as federal agents sifted through evidence of her betrayal and her children confronted the harsh truth of their parents' deception, Shelley realized something else. Emilio was gone. Have you heard from your father? She asked, trying to mask the desperation in her voice. Sienna laughed, but there was no humor in it. Which one? The man who lied to us and used us as pawns in his corporate fraud? Or the real father you made us despise because it made your affair easier to hide? Before Shelley could answer, another notification pinged. Sienna read it, then looked at her mother with a mix of pity and disgust. The board of BioAdvance just announced an emergency meeting. Apparently, Ray's wife, his real wife, the one he never planned to leave, is demanding a full audit of all his business dealings. She paused, including his personal expenses. Shelley's gaze fell once again on the divorce papers, finally noticing the meticulous prenuptial agreement she had signed years ago, the one she'd forgotten in her rush to build a grander future. Like everything else in her carefully crafted world, it too had been a trap, waiting to snap shut. Outside, the Caribbean sun painted the horizon in brilliant oranges and pinks as Emilio Monroe stood on the balcony of his beachfront home, watching the waves roll in. 6 months had passed since Ryan Alvarez was let out of BioAdvance in handcuffs, marking the downfall of his corrupt empire exactly as planned. The morning's Financial Times lay on the table beside Emilio, its headlines still clear. Former BioAdvance CEO faces additional federal charges. But Emilio's mind was no longer on Ray's legal troubles. Instead, his focus was on the young woman walking up the beach path, her dark hair catching the last light of the evening. Sienna had called the week before, asking if she could visit. She had graduated early from Westfield Academy, her ethical exposé on corporate fraud in the medical device industry earning her academic honors and early acceptance into several prestigious universities. Dad, her voice floated up from the path, still cautious, as if testing the word's meaning each time. Up here, he replied, watching her climb the steps to his balcony. She carried herself differently now, straighter, more confident, free from the weight of lies. I got accepted into the biomedical engineering program, she said without preamble. Full scholarship. Emilio smiled, recognizing the same straightforwardness in her approach to important news. Congratulations. Have you told your siblings? Sienna's expression darkened slightly. Zara is still trying to process everything. She's in therapy now, trying to understand how she let herself be manipulated for so long. And Luke, she sighed. Luke is angry not just at Mom and Ray, but at himself for believing them. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip lower over the water. The lights of Emilio's new research facility began to glow softly in the dusk, the sign reading More Ethical Medical Innovations shining gently. I saw the announcement about your new affordable cardiac stent, Sienna said at last, the one designed specifically for healthcare systems in developing countries. It's really impressive, Dad. Emilio turned to study his daughter's face, seeing in it the same passion for innovation and helping others that had driven him to build Meditech in the first place. The trust funds are doing well, he said carefully. The educational provisions are generating solid returns. I know the trustees send quarterly reports. Sienna smiled with a hint of irony. Very detailed reports with lots of emphasis on ethical investment strategies. Another quiet settled between them, broken only by the sound of waves and distant music from the beach bars. Finally, Sienna spoke again, her voice softer, less certain. Do you think Zara and Luke will ever understand why you did what you did? Emilio considered the question thoughtfully. Understanding takes time. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who wronged you but yourself, for not seeing the truth sooner. Sienna nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. I've been writing to them, trying to explain things from my perspective about finding the DNA test, overhearing Ray's true nature, realizing how Mom manipulated us all. She paused, then added, Luke actually wrote back last week. He asked about your company's internship program. A shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, and for a moment, father and daughter watched its silent arc together. Below them, researchers were leaving the facility for the day, their voices faint on the evening breeze discussions of clinical trials, affordable medical solutions, innovations designed to help people rather than just generate profits. There's something else, Sienna said hesitantly. I've been thinking after I finish my degree, would there be a place for me here? Not out of family obligation, but because of what you're doing making medical technology accessible to everyone. Focusing on ethics over profits, that's what I want to do too, Sienna said. Emilio felt a tightness in his chest finally ease. His revenge had been complete. Ryan and Shelley had lost everything they'd schemed for, their corruption uncovered, their lies exposed. But this moment, watching his daughter choose her own path toward ethical innovation, toward healing instead of harm, this was far more satisfying than revenge. The door will always be open, he said simply, for all of you. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, father and daughter stood together on the balcony, gazing out over the facility where a new legacy was being forged, one rooted in truth, integrity, and the simple belief that doing good could also be good business. Below, the waves kept their timeless rhythm, washing away old wounds and ushering in new possibilities. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, opportunities, and chances to prove that the best revenge wasn't just about tearing down the corrupt, but about building something better in their wake. 5 years later, the weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal lay open on Reed Church's mahogany desk. The headline stood out boldly on the crisp paper, From Scandal to Success, the Redemption of Medical Technology. The article marked the 5th anniversary of what business schools now called the Meditech Gambit, a cautionary tale about corporate ethics, family loyalty, and the cost of betrayal. Reed leaned back in his leather chair, recalling the day his legal team first approached him about acquiring Meditech's research division. The article summarized the fallout perfectly. Former BioAdvance CEO Ryan Alvarez had begun serving a 12-year federal sentence last month after exhausting his final appeal. Charges ranging from corporate fraud and patent theft to falsifying FDA submissions and embezzlement painted a portrait of systemic corruption that had rocked the medical device industry. The once billion-dollar company now existed only in bankruptcy court records and business ethics textbooks. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Church, Emilio Monroe is on the line. Reed smiled as he picked up the phone. Emilio, I was just reading about your latest breakthrough, affordable insulin delivery systems. You're making my R&D team look lazy. Emilio's voice was relaxed, the tone of a man at peace with his decisions. Your team's doing great. I saw the numbers from the Stent project. You've doubled accessibility in developing markets using your patents and research. Reed replied, best acquisition I ever made, even if I didn't fully understand your plan at the time. They discussed market projections and innovation pipelines, but both knew the real reason for the call. Today marked another milestone, the first graduating class from the Whistleblower Protection Foundation's corporate ethics program. How's Kurt handling the foundation? Reed asked. Like a man who's found his true calling, Emilio chuckled. The program's already stopped 3 major corporate fraud attempts. Turns out my old head of security makes an excellent ethics watchdog. The conversation shifted to personal updates. Sienna's startup is really taking off, Emilio reported proudly. She's combined her biomedical engineering degree with principles of ethical innovation. The vaccine distribution system she developed for remote areas is attracting serious investor interest. And the others? Reed inquired. Emilio hesitated briefly. Luke graduated from business school last month. He's interning with an ethics compliance firm, wants to learn how to prevent what happened at BioAdvance from happening again. His voice softened. Zara is getting married next spring. She asked me to walk her down the aisle. After ending the call, Reed pulled up the rest of the article on his tablet. Shelley Molina, formerly Monroe, was sentenced to 3 years for her role in corporate espionage, serving 2 before early release. Sources say she now lives in a modest apartment in Phoenix. Her efforts to reclaim her former lifestyle have been blocked by a prenuptial agreement she signed 2 decades ago. Her civil suit seeking partial ownership of more ethical medical innovations was dismissed with prejudice, the judge citing overwhelming evidence of systematic betrayal and fraud. Ray Alvarez's web of deception unraveled dramatically. His wife of 30 years divorced him immediately after uncovering his multiple affairs and financial crimes. An SEC investigation revealed he had maintained 4 separate families using embezzled corporate funds. BioAdvance shareholders lost billions when the company collapsed, leading to the largest corporate fraud settlement in the medical device industry's history. But from those ruins arose something unexpected. More ethical medical innovations, founded by Emilio Monroe in the Caribbean, has revolutionized medical device development. Their focus on affordable, accessible healthcare solutions opened new markets while upholding strict ethical standards. The company's partnership with Church Industries Research Division has produced groundbreaking technologies at a fraction of the traditional cost. Across town, in a bright conference room, Kurt O'Brien addressed the graduating class of corporate ethics officers. The foundation he led had become a powerful force for industry reform. Its whistleblower protection program was setting new benchmarks for corporate accountability. The Meditech story isn't just about revenge, he told his students. It's about choices. Every day, in boardrooms and offices worldwide, people decide between easy profits and ethical conduct. Your job is to ensure they have the support and protection needed to make the right choice. At that moment, in a small apartment in Phoenix, Shelley Molina scrolled through her social media feed. Photos of her children's achievements flashed by Sienna accepting an innovation award, Luke graduating with honors, Zara announcing her engagement. She hadn't been invited to any of these occasions. Her attempts to reach out were met with silence or, worse, form letters from their lawyers. Her phone reminded her of another mandatory check-in with her parole officer. The designer bags and luxury cars were gone, replaced by bus passes and off-brand clothes. Her former high society friends had disappeared along with her status. Occasionally, she saw her name mentioned in articles about corporate fraud as a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, in a federal prison in Colorado, Ryan Alvarez sat in his cell reading a letter from his ex-wife's attorneys. The last of his hidden accounts had been discovered and seized. His efforts to publish a memoir were blocked by legal injunctions. Even his children from various affairs had changed their names, distancing themselves from his toxic legacy. Back in the Caribbean, Emilio Monroe stood in his company's research lab, watching Sienna present her latest innovation to a team of developers. Her passion for ethical technology mirrored his own, but she brought fresh perspectives and new ideas. A plaque in the lab dedicated the space to truth and innovation, a subtle reminder of the lessons learned from corporate deception. Luke now had his own office at the ethics compliance firm, its walls adorned with case studies of corporate fraud. His colleagues didn't know he spent hours studying the BioAdvance collapse, trying to understand how charm and manipulation had blinded so many to obvious warning signs. His quarterly reports to the foundation often included insights drawn from his unique position as both victim and student of corporate deception. Zara's journey had been different, but equally profound. Her experiences led her to specialize in psychology, focusing on helping children affected by parental betrayal. Her upcoming wedding would include her father and siblings, yet 2 empty seats in the front row would quietly honor the parents whose choices had reshaped her understanding of love and loyalty. The Whistleblower Protection Foundation's headquarters displayed a mission statement that captured the enduring impact of the Meditech story. Truth is not just about exposing lies, it's about building something better from those revelations. In his Caribbean home office, Emilio added final touches to the ethics guidebook he had been writing. The last chapter, titled The Price of Truth, contained a passage soon to be quoted in business schools' ethics programs. Revenge without purpose is mere destruction, but when combined with protection of the innocent and creation of positive change, it becomes transformation. True justice isn't measured by what falls, but by what rises from the ashes. His phone lit up with a family group chat notification, Sienna sharing photos of her latest prototype, Luke seeking feedback on an ethics compliance framework, and Zara discussing wedding plans. The trust funds he had established had grown considerably, managed by those who understood both finance and integrity. Yet the real wealth wasn't in the accounts, it was in the lessons learned, the principles upheld, and the relationships rebuilt on foundations of truth. As the sun set over the Caribbean Sea, painting the sky with colors no artist could capture, scientists in his research facility worked on innovations that would save lives without bankrupting families. Across offices worldwide, his children were building their own legacies of ethical conduct and positive impact. Meanwhile, in prison cells and modest apartments, those who had chosen deception lived with the consequences of their choices. The business press had called it a medical device mogul's masterful revenge, but that headline missed the deeper meaning. It wasn't just about punishment, justice, or vindication. It was about transformation of an industry, of a family, and of the very concept of success itself. The final paragraph of the Wall Street Journal article captured it perfectly. The lasting legacy of the Meditech story isn't found in the courtrooms where Ryan and Shelley Molina faced justice, or in the bankruptcy filings that ended BioAdvance's corrupt empire. It's found in the lives saved by affordable medical devices, in the whistleblowers protected by new corporate ethics programs, and in the next generation of business leaders who learned that true success comes not from what you take, but from what you build, protect, and leave behind. As night fell over the Caribbean, lights flickered on in research labs and ethics offices worldwide. In each of these places, people faced choices between easy profits and difficult truths, between short-term gains and long-term value. And in many of those moments, they remembered the story of a man who had lost everything but his integrity, and in holding on to it, had built something far greater than what he had lost. The waves rolled endlessly against the shore, their rhythm a reminder that time moves only forward. In their eternal cycle of destruction and renewal, they echoed the fundamental truth Emilio Monroe had discovered. Sometimes the most perfect revenge is simply building a better future from the ruins of betrayal. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.